shadow of three houses, mother's legacy. For every mother who left love behind instead of wealth, and for every child still learning how to inherit her heart. Prologue. The winter silence. In the depth of winter, when the sky hung low and colourless, snow fell like ashes outside the hospital. Inside, a faint heartbeat lingered between the beeps of a fading machine. 6 children waited for the silence they feared most. The silence that would mean their mother was truly gone. But before the final sound slipped away, she whispered, her breath trembling like a candle's last light. Don't hate him, Eunjung. Forgive me on Ho. The houses, they're for all of you. Share them together. The words dissolved into the sterile air, and the world held its breath. Outside, the snow kept falling, as if heaven itself was trying to bury the pain. And so began the inheritance not of wealth, but of wounds, and of a mother's love, too deep to die. Chapter 1. The mother's final breath. The winter night had settled so completely that the hospital window reflected the room back at itself, a pale square hovering in the glass, the bed's thin rails, like parentheses around a sentence that might not be finished. Snow fell in soft, stubborn flakes, a steady accumulation of silence. In the corridor, a cart squeaked, then receded beyond it. The machines kept their metronomic counsel, indifferent as stars. Eunjung sat without moving, her spine a line drawn carefully against the moulded chair, her hands arranged in her lap as if they were not her hands at all, but a guest, someone on good behaviour. Her mother slept. Sleep, they called it, but the word felt wrong for this motionless shore, this shallow breathing that forgot itself and returned only when the machine reminded it to. She had tried reading. Her phone lay face down under the chair, as if modesty might tame the torrent of messages from neighbours and cousins, who were, to their credit, generous with condolences and with advice. Stay strong, they wrote, those who had not sat in a room like this. Eat something, said those who had. She could not eat. The thought of chewing felt obscene, like laughter at a funeral before the eulogy had begun. On the bed, the old woman's face, a map Eunjung knew better than any city, had become smaller, as if the terrain were folding upon itself. The once broad cheekbones, the mouth that had scolded and blessed in the same afternoon, the eyes that had measured joy and disciplined grief, now the lids rested half-closed, showing a crescent of grey. Each time the chest rose, the curve was so slight that Eunjung leaned forward, just a fraction. It was a habit of hope to verify breath with your own body. The room smelled faintly of alcohol swabs, and a sweetness she could not name. Flowers would come later, on a day with a name. Tonight there was only the hush of waiting and the snow, the way it accumulated on the sill and made the city seem farther away, the way it erased edges so the hospital could float, a ship moored at the end of something. Her sisters had gone home hours earlier to sleep, promising to return at dawn. They were practical women, both, hands good with soup and calendars. The youngest, Cholsu, had fallen asleep in a plastic chair by the radiator, arms folded like a guard at a small museum. He had insisted on staying, but was no match for the hour. His mouth was open slightly. Once his head jerked and he blinked, disoriented, then surrendered again to the warmth. Eunjung did not begrudge them rest. She did not begrudge anyone anything, except time itself, which had understood her mother's value and begun to count it down. On the side table, the clear plastic pitcher caught the fluorescent light and broke it into dull shards. The pitcher had become the sun of this tiny universe, everything arranged around its utility. Next to it lay her mother's fountain pen, the black lacquer, dulled by years of handling. Eunjung had brought it from the apartment earlier that evening, without really knowing why. It had been in the drawer with the receipts and stamps and the little red pad. Her mother dabbed with the seal when she felt official. The pen felt heavy for its size, old-fashioned in a world that clicked and beeped. Her mother had always preferred to write lists, notes, reminders to future versions of herself. Boil more anchovies. Call water company. Pay property tax. The pen was the one luxury she had allowed herself years ago, when the second house became a first hint of stability. Even a pen can be a vow I will not forget. Yomma, Eunjung whispered now, because sometimes sound persuades the world to shape itself. I'm here. The woman on the bed, mother, widow, maker of impossible soups from poor ingredients, did not stir. Her breath moved in shallow ridges. The machine answered her, an obedient child. Eunjung thought of a different winter. She was 8. Their father had died in February that swallowed every colour. There had been no machines then, only a borrowed blanket and the polite concern of neighbours who did not enter, because grief was a room you respected by standing at the threshold. Her mother had gone to the market the next morning because hunger did not recognize sorrow, and the children had to eat. At the stall, their mother had spoken with the owner in a voice that had learned a new rhythm overnight, a register lower, a beat steadier. That was the day, Unjung realized later, that the houses began long before anyone named them. You start a house with courage, not with keys. The door opened softly and a nurse entered, headphones around her neck, her hair pulled into a hurried bun. She smiled the way professionals do in rooms like this, gently enough to be human, distantly enough to be useful. She checked the IV, the oxygen line, made a note on the chart with a pen that did not feel like a vow. Then, before leaving, she touched the old woman's shoulder. It was not medical, the touch. It was a hand to a hand, a kindness we call small because language refuses to measure it correctly. Call if there's any change, the nurse said. Unjun nodded. Change. The word was loaded, out of place here, where everything and nothing changed in the time it took to take a breath. She stood to stretch. The window made a mirror of her, the coat too thin for a night like this, the bun that had loosened into its own opinion. She lifted the shade a little, and the snow on the sill surrendered from powder to shape. Down on the street, a plough moved like a patient animal, pushing white from one side to the other, making a path that would be swallowed again in minutes. Persistence comforted her. Even futility has its liturgy. The door eased open a second time, and cold air came with the figure in the doorway. The figure hesitated. Then a voice familiar, tired. A string tightened too long. Is she? He began, but did not finish. Unjung turned. She's resting, she said. She did not add, your lateness has already happened. Myung-ho stood just inside the door, as if the room were a country he needed a visa to enter. Snow freckled his shoulders, melting into dark constellations on his coat. He had shaved badly. He always shaved badly when he was afraid, rushing through the ordinary, nicking himself on the rituals that make chaos survivable. He wore the expression of a man who had rehearsed 100 things to say and chosen none. Traffic, he said, though they both knew traffic was a story. People told to avoid other stories. It's late, Unjung said, but she made a place for him at the bed, with her body, stepping back, widening the air. He removed his gloves slowly, one finger at a time, like apology. The gloves went into his pocket, then returned to his hands, restless as guilt. He stared at their mother. The lines around his mouth deepened in that way sorrow has, of carving the face to expose the truth of the bone. For a long minute, they said nothing. Silence had been their mother's first language. Perhaps they honoured her by speaking it. Finally, Unjung offered the chair. He shook his head. He preferred to stand, as if readiness could keep the worst from occurring, as if the posture of a guard could out-argue the body's decision to stop. She tried to say something earlier, Unjung said at last, but it was small. What did she say? His voice was careful, as if he were approaching a ledge. Unjung looked at the pen on the side table, then at her mother's hand, the blue veins like winter rivers beneath the skin. I couldn't catch all of it, only the shape of it. She wanted us to be good to each other. Us? He asked, and the word held both hope and fear. All of us, she said. The houses, too. The word houses seemed to make the fluorescent lights hum a fraction louder, or perhaps the sound merely found a matching frequency in their minds. He nodded once, a concession to the inevitable subject. Outside, the snow thickened, erasing the little paths the plough had made. Inside, the breathing machine measured time without mercy. In the radiator's muted clatter, in Cheolsu's, even sleeping, in the way Unjung and Myung-ho stood like bookends on either side of the bed. The night announced itself as the kind that does not pass so much as remakes what it leaves behind. Eonma, Unjung tried again, leaning close. We're both here. The old woman's eyelids fluttered. A bird, striking glass, and reconsidering flight. Her mouth moved. No sound came at first, only the barest architecture of syllables forming on air and failing. Unjung reached for the cup, wetted the sponge, touched it to her mother's lips. Yunjung, the old woman made, and the shape of her daughter's name carried warmth into the room like steam from soup.